Well, welcome to Living Beyond Limits. I think you all know I'm Reverend Jennifer Spear. We are a part of Centers for Spiritual Living. Welcome this morning, and I welcome those of you who are online joining us also. And if you are new to us today, from the very bottom of our hearts to you, we are so glad that you joined us today. Welcome. And so let's start this service by reading the mission statement that's on the front of your bulletin. We are a sanctuary where people can discover and reveal the presence of God within their own being and experience their oneness with all life. Through the realization of this inner presence of love and peace, we give way to the evolutionary impulse of the divine and become a beneficial presence in the world. That's what we're up to here at Living Beyond Limits, as we are giving ourselves the opportunity through what we do here to awaken to our own spiritual nature, to awaken to the fact that, yes, indeed, everything in this world is spirit personifying itself as this world, and that we are each also individualized expressions of that one. That means then what is true of spirit, what is true of God, life, the universe, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever you want to call that, also lives within us, that we are the microcosm of that macrocosm. That means then that love lives within us, that peace is within us, that the truth of us is we are creative and we are whole and we are made out of infinite potentiality. And what happens is, as we come to realize and remember and walk in that truth, then when we go out into the world, we come to the world differently. We come to the world more loving and caring and generous and kind. We are able to stand in the truth of our own wholeness and our own power when the world is not encouraging that or inviting that forward. And then as we come to the world differently, the world responds to us differently, but because everything is connected to everything else, we are part of this oneness of life, this wholeness of life. It affects the whole. And so I thank each and every one of you for answering the call of your own spirit to be walking this path, to be bringing your light into this world, which is none other than the light of the divine itself. So thank you for that. Well, happy belated Valentine's Day, everybody. Isn't it just wonderful that we have an entire day that is just dedicated to love? You know, I don't know if you know this, but Valentine's Day is celebrated here in America and in Europe, in China, and in South Korea, and in India. Isn't that amazing? You know, love is so central to our very beingness as human beings. And love is also one of the core values of Centers for Spiritual Living and at Living Beyond Limits. It is central to our mission statement. It's central to our purpose. It's central to what we teach and what we talk about and what we do here. In fact, this morning, Rick called Living Beyond Limits Loving Beyond Limits. Don't you love that? I think really that love is paramount to walking a spiritual path and to living a spiritual life, regardless of what that path is. When we allow love to move through us and express love, it enables us to discover our own spiritual nature. And when we discover our spiritual nature and let love move through us, we bring greater good into the world through whatever it is that we are doing. I think that one of the reasons to even awaken to your own spiritual nature is so that you can awaken to the love that resides within you that you haven't yet discovered. A wellspring of love, maybe before you started this path, that was only for the people that you really were close to in your life, only for your family, or maybe for a few close friends. But when you awaken to this love that lives inside of you, what happens is we start feeling connected to everyone and everything. we become kin with this family of humanity. And then, as we feel like we are connected to everyone and everything, and that they are kin to us, what happens is our heart opens even more, and we become even more loving and more open-hearted as we live our lives. And I know that sometimes the way that we think and the way that we act and the way that we speak is not entirely loving. Yes? I think most often one of the reasons that we don't act or speak or think in loving ways is because we are in judgment of that other person. We are in judgment of that person because they don't meet up to our expectations. They aren't doing what we think they should be doing or how they should be acting, how they should be behaving. Sometimes we're even in negative judgment of people because they don't believe what we think they should believe, or their values aren't what we think their values should be. You know, your spouse or your kid or your neighbor who isn't doing what you think they should do, or particularly, I think, if it's your spouse, they're not doing it quick enough, or when you think they should be doing it. You know, they're playing on their phone instead of cleaning up the mess in the kitchen that they made. And what happens then in that judgment, and they're not measuring up to our expectations, we act in ways that are less than loving, yes? Or how about maybe it's the gypsy that's begging in the parking lot at the grocery store, and you're in judgment of that person because they, from your perception, don't need to do that. They don't have to do that. They're doing that by choice. And that doesn't agree with your values, so you're disapproving. Or maybe it's the person who is driving selfishly on the road. Or maybe it's the person who's talking loud on their cell phone while you're waiting in a waiting room or in the grocery store. But what happens is in our judgment, we close our hearts, we withhold our love, we even send them negative energy through our judgment and our disapproval. Yes? Sometimes you even give them the evil eye or something. Sometimes we aren't loving out of our need to control or out of our need to be right. And when we are right, we're convinced that we are right, then we are convinced that they are wrong. You know, your spouse doesn't wear the appropriate outfit to the party, so you act snarky with them. Or your neighbor doesn't agree with you politically, so you don't interact with that neighbor or you don't speak to that neighbor. Or your coworker is repeatedly late for work, so you kind of act dismissive to them and give them the cold shoulder. Or maybe the evil eye. There's a story that says, a troubled monk goes to his abbot for guidance. After listening intently, the abbot asks the monk to join him on a walk. They arrive at a pond near the back of the monastery. The abbot asks the monk to pick up a stone and toss it into the center of the pond. The monk complies. Now, said the abbot, as the ripples come closer to shore, stick your finger in the water and try to stop them. The monk tries, but as he sticks his finger in the water, the action just creates more ripples. The confused monk looks at his mentor and says, Abbot, I can't. My actions just cause more ripples. The abbot smiles and says, so you cannot stop the ripples? Correct, said the monk. But you could have stopped yourself from tossing the stone into the pond in the first place. I'm not talking about turning a blind eye to inappropriate behavior or to harmful behavior. And I'm not talking about being a doormat. What I'm talking about is, since love is central to this spiritual path that we are walking, I'm talking about seeing or beholding something more than what you're looking at when you look at the surface of what is happening, what that person is thinking, what that person is doing. I'm talking about beholding the fullness of a person. to behold that, yes, indeed, that person is an incarnation of spirit. Yes, indeed, that person contains absolute intelligence. That person contains love and wholeness and goodness. I'm talking about looking at the whole person that is behind the behavior. But in our negative judgment, beneath our negative judgment, we still contain within ourselves that need to love. We still have beneath that judgment a need for unity. We still have a need for brotherhood. We still, on a very deep spiritual need, we have a need to bring greater good into this world and to be a healing presence. Part of the reason that we aren't always that healing presence, we aren't that activity of love, is because we're only looking at part of the picture. We're only looking from an egoic perspective that measures the right and the wrong, and they should be doing this way, and competition and scarcity and fear. We're only looking at a partial picture of that person. We're not seeing in those moments through the eyes of our heart. We're not seeing through the eyes of our spirit. We're not seeing through the eyes of the living Spirit, that one divine presence. We aren't seeing through the eyes of our soul in those moments. Krishnamurti, who was an Indian philosopher from the Theosophical tradition, said, "The desire to be certain, to be secure, is the beginning of bondage. It's only when the mind is not caught in the net of certainty that it is in a state of discovery." When we aren't already convinced that we are right, we can actually see more. We are open to more. When we are filled with judgment and our need to be right, then we don't have that ability to see that which is greater than what is on the surface. We can't see that wisdom or intelligence within them. We can't see their wholeness or their goodness. We can't see their greatness or their power. We're only able to see that partial picture then. But as we witness who a person really is in their spiritual magnificence, that they are more than what we are seeing before us, when we are able to see that they too are individualized expressions of that eternal thing itself, that they contain within themselves infinite potential, when we're able to see that, we create space for that to actually come forward. We create an energetic space that's opening and invitational, and it invites that to come forward and be expressed. I know that you probably all know the story of that teacher who was told that her students were all exceptional students, when in fact they weren't, and how they all succeeded and did so much better than expected. Let me tell you part of the story in short. It's called the Rosenthal effect. Rosenthal told the teachers that this very special test from Harvard had the very special ability to predict which kids were about to be very special. That is, which kids were about to experience a dramatic growth in their IQ. After the kids took the test, he then chose from every class several children totally at random. There was nothing at all to distinguish these kids from other kids. But he told the teachers that the test predicted the kids were on the verge of an intense intellectual bloom. As he followed the children over the next 2 years, Rosenthal discovered that the teachers' expectations of these kids really did affect the students. Quote, "If the teacher had been led to expect greater gains in IQ, then increasingly those kids gained more IQ," he says. But how do expectations influence IQ? As Rosenthal did more research, he found that expectations affect teachers moment-to-moment interactions with the children they teach in 1,000 almost invisible ways. Teachers give the students that they expect to succeed more time to answer questions. They give more specific feedback, more approval. They constantly touch, nod, and smile at those kids more. What we look for, we invite forward. What we expect, we create room for. It's a law of magnification. We magnify that which we behold. We magnify that which we look for. And so the title of my talk today is Love the One You're With. As in, love the person that is standing before you at any given moment. I'm talking about that as we see the divine essence in people, as we see their wholeness, as we see the good within them, as we recognize and know that they are capable, we invite those things forward from within that person. Patrick Harbula, who wrote Magic of the Soul, said, "Imagine acting with the understanding that God's life energy is flowing through everyone. And your job is to help them recognize it through your interactions with them. The first and most important place to apply this practice is with yourself. The second is in your home with those closest to you. And third is in your business relationships. And I add, and with everyone in the world. What if your job were to help them recognize the divine within them, their own spirit, their own goodness, their own wholeness, their own power, by you witnessing it? When we are able to see the good that is behind whatever's happening, whatever we perceive in the moment, it heals and it restores. It brings peace to our minds. It opens our hearts. We add more love to that collective pool of energy and consciousness that we live in. We are always contributing to that pool of collective energy. Like throwing that rock in the pond. It ripples out into the world, whatever it is that we are thinking and beholding and putting our attention on and holding in consciousness. So what if then Valentine's Day this year began your adventure of love? Began your adventure of love through witnessing that something greater in everyone? What if this Valentine's Day began your adventure of love, of seeing through the eyes of your heart when you're out in the world, or when you're in your own home, or when you're at work? What if it began your adventure of seeing through the eyes of your heart, the eyes of your spirit, through the eyes of God? Harbula said, "How would your life be different if every interaction, or at least the majority, were dedicated to empowering others?" Wow. What if every interaction were designed with the intention of empowering others? Empowering others starts with the intention to do just that. You know, it can be so simple. Empowering others can be as simple as saying to someone, "You can do this." It can be as simple as saying, "You've got what it takes." It can be so simple as to tell someone, "I believe in you. You'll figure this out," rather than jumping into the pit with them when something challenging is going on in their life. "You've got this. I know you've got what it takes." There's so many ways we can empower people. That one is just by witnessing they have that. capital T, that within them. Seeing the divine essence in someone, seeing the greater within someone, empowers them to discover it for themselves. It enables them to discover their own power, their own wisdom, their own goodness, their love, their divine potential. And so you have a little piece of paper in your bulletin. I invite you to take that out if you don't have one, or if you need that, or if you need a pen. Will you please raise your hand? And so when you have that and you have your pen, I invite you just to close your eyes for a second and to ask yourself, what do I need to do to have a more empowering attitude towards others? You already know it deep within yourself. What do I need to do to have a more empowering attitude towards others? I don't know about you, but I just need to quit telling myself that I'm right all the time. And so I invite you to close your eyes again and to ask yourself, what do I need to do to have a more empowering attitude towards myself? What do I need to do in order to have a more empowering attitude towards myself? In the Gospel of Thomas, it says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. If you bring forth your spirit, your ability to see through the eyes of spirit, to see through the eyes of your spirit, through the eyes of your heart, it will save you from the internal hell that you create for yourself through your negative judgment and your need to be right. If you bring forward your spirit and see through the eyes of your soul, which are the eyes of God, you will be a bringer of heaven to earth. If you see beyond what is at the surface and instead see yourself or the other people that you're looking at, if you see their or your inner intelligence, your or their power, your or their good, your or their light, you invite that to come forward and be magnified in the world. That's how it works. And as a result, you'll be magnifying more good and bringing that into this world, in turn, creating greater peace within yourself, greater peace in your interactions, greater peace in this world, greater peace in that collective consciousness. You'll be a catalyst for healing, a catalyst for wholeness, to take root and to flower in this world. And so blessings to each one of you as you walk this path of bringing spirit into this world in a way that is loving and healing, in a way that makes whole and blesses, bringing your own light and the light of the divine into this world, because that is what you do as a blessing to everyone. And so blessings to all of you on this path. And so I invite you to join me in an affirmative prayer. And so I recognize right now that infinite presence that is always right where each and every single one of us are. That infinite presence whose very nature is love and peace, whose very essence is infinite potentiality and wholeness and power and goodness. That infinite one who was before time began, that presence that will be until the ends of the earth. That one presence that is here personifying itself in and through everything, expressing itself as all that we see, and so much more. And so today we turn our attention to that so much more, recognizing that as we turn to it, it turns to us. As we open our hearts and our minds to the love of the divine, out flows a blessing into our lives and into the lives of every person that we contact. How good it is to be in recognition of this presence, this life of God, which is the only life there is, the life that we are living. And so I know today that we are being poured out a blessing greater than we could ever contain, for that is the nature of Spirit, to give, to pour forward. Spirit withholds nothing. And so today we open ourselves to the good. We open ourselves to the love and the peace and the light, knowing that as we open ourselves to the light of the divine, it illuminates our minds, it magnifies our hearts, and it magnifies the truth of our oneness with everyone. And so today we commit to being the blessing in this world. We commit to being the I am presence that only knows love, that only knows peace, that only knows wholeness and goodness. And so I speak this word not just about us, but I speak this word about every single politician and world leader, every decision maker, every leader of every organization, knowing right now that there is a great inspiration going on in their hearts and their minds. And it is the whispering and the calling of that divine presence of love, that presence of wholeness and of peace and of right action. And so I know that Spirit is guiding the decisions and the hands and the feet of every person that is in a position of power right now. Spirit is revealing itself as the highest of knowings, as the greatest of plans, a plan that works for all of humanity, where good is the only thing that is happening. And so I release this prayer into that creative law of the universe, knowing that it is reflected right back to us because it's always been the truth. And so today, in our openness and in our acceptance, we allow that to be expressed in a greater way and in a fuller way. And so it is with a heart filled with thanksgiving that I invite you to join me saying, and so it is. And so I have a couple of invitations for you. One is next week we are having our annual business meeting. I invite you to stay afterwards for that. We are going to be talking about what we did this year and then making plans for next year, what we want to do for outreach, what we want to do for fundraisers and classes. We are also going to be having a soup, salad, bread, and dessert potluck. There's a sign-up sheet in the back. Last year, we had 3 people bring each one of those things. So if you're up for that, we'd like 12 people to sign up. I don't know what's up there. Last week, there was hardly any people that signed up. So if you're willing to bring something, we would love for you to do that. We are also voting on our budget. I don't know if I said that. And voting on 3 board members. They're going to continue to serve on the board. Pat and Mike are still working with the people that are experiencing homelessness in Long Beach. If you would like to help work with them, will you raise your hand? Thank you. And talk with them if you'd like to do that. Our Sunday talks come out usually on Monday night. They are posted on our website and on our YouTube channel. We invite you to follow us on Facebook and check in on Meetup and say that you're coming. Follow us on Instagram. And we have prayer shawls in the back. We would like to support you in prayer. If you have a prayer request, you can put a prayer request in the box back there. We have prayer shawls that you can take home with you if you would like to be wrapped in that energy of prayer. And the practitioners are happy to sit down and pray with you after church. I invite you to repeat after me, good fills my life now. I recognize it. I savor it. I own it. I am it. And so it is.